So now they did. And they have. Here is a Vox video about how the U.S. may be aiding war crimes in Yemen. Maybe.
One of the Middle East's bloodiest conflicts is also one of its most overlooked. It's not Syria or Iraq. It's in a different place entirely, Yemen. The 20-month-old civil war there has killed more than 10,000 people and triggered a massive humanitarian crisis. But press coverage has been minimal, overshadowed by the fight against ISIS in Syria and in Iraq. In Yemen, one side has Houthi rebels, backed by Iran.
This is from 2016, by the way. The U.S. is helping Saudi Arabia bomb Yemen, and it's a disaster. Is this a Johnny Harris video? I mean, he was, back then, he was there. Is there TOS in this?
On the other, you have the former Yemeni government of Abdrabbu Mansur al-Hadi, backed by a coalition of 10 countries, led by neighboring Saudi Arabia, who is ultimately also backed by the US. The civil war there erupted in 2015, when the Houthis, a Shiite group who received money and weapons from Iran, took up arms to overthrow Yemen's government, which is Sunni, and backed by Saudi Arabia. The Houthis complain that the government discriminated against them for years, mistreating them on a large scale, and that their fight is a fight to be treated fairly. Many in the region, by contrast, see it very differently. They think it's the latest front in a shadow war between Saudi Arabia and Iran for control over the entire region. In March of 2015, Saudi Arabia began bombing Houthi-held territory across Yemen, causing mass civilian casualties. They've destroyed targets ranging from marketplaces to hospitals, from schools, and even to a funeral recently where 140 people were killed in a single strike. In August, the Saudis bombed the vital port of Hodeidah, severely damaging a main source of Yemen's food and humanitarian aid shipments, and increasing the chances of mass starvation in what is already an impoverished country. The indiscriminate bombing has prompted investigations by the UN for possible war crimes. But while the Saudis are leading this bloody campaign, the blame also spreads to a great power whose support is directly contributing to the carnage, to the United States.
No
The US
way,
has supported
no,
Saudi
stop.
Arabia militarily since World War II, selling arms, providing military aid, and training the Saudi military on how to use US manufacturing.
Including, literally, Al-Qaeda, by the way. If you remember the famous America deserved 9/11 quote from a particular political commentator, if you remember the entire context of that situation, at that time, I was specifically talking about a certain veteran representative, okay, who had actually blocked a measure to stop giving arms to Saudi Arabia. Okay? And I was actually criticizing him for blocking the measure to stop giving arms to Saudi Arabia, to continue giving arms to Saudi Arabia, while simultaneously talking about 9/11, about how, like, oh, they hate us because they ain't us. They hate us because they hate us. Those arms were ending up in the hands of Al-Qaeda, okay? American arms were being given to Al-Qaeda to be used in Yemen. Just something to remember. Okay? Just something to remember. These are things that I've been talking about for years. So whenever people come to this broadcast and say, Hasan, you've changed your perspective, it's because they didn't understand my perspective at all, or rather, they thought, like, you know, Saudi Arabia is a good person, or is a good country to criticize, but America is not a good country to criticize, right? Like, I mean, just remember that. A throwback. If you have a problem supporting terrorists and those who fund terrorists, why did you vote against stopping our arms sales to Saudi Arabia 4 times? Those weapons are now literally in the hands of Al-Qaeda. Precisely the point I made in the video that cuts off right before. Obviously, I don't support terrorism. After all, I'm criticizing the American government for supporting terrorism, both leading up to and post 9/11. I realize I use imprecise language that got easily weaponized by the right, but spare me your moral grandstanding. As far as the brave Mujahideen joke goes, it was direct reference to Reagan arming and commanding the Mujahideen, since we consider them our allies when we armed them. How many identical foreign policy blunders will it take for the U.S. to stop repeating the same mistakes? Damn, dog. That's crazy. That's crazy. A lot of people say, Hasan, you've changed. To them, I say, you've changed. You have. Or rather, you never understood my argument at all. You never internalized it. You never understood it. You thought we were in the same fight because you were like, oh, well, he's shitting on Saudi Arabia. I don't like those guys either. They're Muslim. They're weird. So funny. Damn, that guy was cooking. Get him on stream. Yeah. Just saying, man. Many people turn around and say, Hasan, you were base when you said America deserved 9/11, but now I'm mad at you. And it's like, no, dude, nothing changed. Nothing changed on my end. Something changed on yours. Okay? Where you decided, because your only understanding of politics revolves around petty drama from online political commentators and what they are telling you is the truth, that usually often aligns with American foreign policy, that your perspective shifted. And now you think anybody that criticizes American foreign policy is just simply saying, America bad, with nothing else to back it up with. You became less intellectually curious. Okay? That's what happened to you. I didn't change. I'm still the same guy. It's you who shut off any kind of dissent. It's you who refuse to see a different perspective completely. I feel you say that too, the Muslim bad part. Man, shut up, Sufi Masoodi. You didn't even know about circumcision, okay? Don't come at me with this shit. I don't want to hear from you ever again about Islam. Don't make me pull out the receipts and make fun of you, okay?
Manufactured planes, tanks, and other weapons. In recent years, Saudi Arabia has bought more weapons from the U.S. than any other country in the world. Just since March of 2015, the U.S. has authorized $22
They show empty grave digging. I don't think that's TOS. No, that's good. That's fine.
$1 billion worth of weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. The most recent deal includes 20 Abrams tanks listed as battle damage replacements. The battle, of course, is Yemen. The weapons the U.S. sells also include cluster bombs, banned by most of the international community, and F-15 fighter planes, which is making up the vast bulk of what the Saudi Air Force is currently using as it bombs Yemen. But America's aid to Saudi Arabia goes way beyond weapon sales, and it's directly contributing to the current fight. That's because Washington is literally helping to refuel Saudi planes while they strike targets across Yemen. When the Saudis asked the U.S. to refuel one of their planes, giant American tankers like the KC-135 Stratotanker take off from the Incirlik Air Base in Turkey or from U.S. carriers in the Arabian Sea. They then link up with Saudi F-15s in international airspace. These airborne refuels give the Saudi planes...
They literally did that. By the way, the Incirlik thing is significant because that base was also used to refuel the F-16s that were bombing Turkish cities in the coup d'etat that happened. So just remember that. Remember the Incirlik base, okay? It's got nukes in it too.
A much
American
longer
nukes.
range, and allows Saudi's air campaign to become more lethal because the planes can stay in the air longer and hit targets much more frequently. As of late November, the US had flown more than 1,600 refueling missions to over 6,300 aircraft in the skies bombing Yemen. That's an average of 2 a day. So why is the US so supportive of this bloody campaign? The most important reason is the Iran nuclear deal. In 2015, the Obama administration offered to drop its crippling economic sanctions on Iran in exchange for Iran limiting its nuclear.
A phenomenal, genuinely good Obama-era foreign policy deal that Donald Trump ripped apart because Israel did not like it. Straight up. Okay? 1,000%. You know who hated the Iran denuclearization deal? Israel. That's it. Everybody else was on board. It took so many years of negotiations to finally get to that. It was a multilateral, like, so many countries involved, and just, it cast it aside, dude.
Program. Without those sanctions, Iran's political and economic power has significantly increased, making Saudi Arabia nervous that their enemy will gain new influence in the region, in countries from Iraq to Lebanon, and from Syria to Yemen.
I don't know about that, man. Trump said that shit on the campaign trail from the get-go. No, his reactionary approach to the Iran denuclearization deal comes from him reading the room correctly. But the idea of, like, hating the Iran denuclearization deal was Israel's biggest gripe with the Obama administration. Part of the reason why Obama is a hated politician in Israel in general is, despite the fact that Obama, on his way out, gave Benjamin Netanyahu a gift of $38 billion over the course of 10 years, is because of the Iran denuclearization deal. It's the major source of conflict. Like, that is definitely one of the biggest problems, because it meant normalizing relations with Iran.
Now that Iranian influence is in Saudi Arabia's backyard.
I've heard America say that the Iran nuclear deal had no guarantees of oversight of Iran nuclear development. Is it true? No, it's a 100% a lie. It is literally the funniest, stupidest lie of all time. That's precisely the reason why that's not even what the Trump administration said. They said Iran is still arming proxies in the region and doing terrorism, so we're throwing the Iran denuclearization deal, even though UN envoys went in, weapons inspectors went into Iran and said Iran literally was following through on the denuclearization deal after Trump had cast it aside. And then Donald Trump, after throwing the deal aside, added additional sanctions. That wasn't even a part of the deal, the whole proxies and, like, funding proxies or whatever. Okay? I'm telling you, one of the gravest, it was just one of the worst things that the Trump administration did as it pertains to foreign policy. Remember, Donald Trump is such a dove, right?
The Saudis fear that Houthi rebels loyal to Iran will now be literally on the footsteps of their country. They want U.S. help beating them back. Secondly, the intervention in Yemen is also a part of
the IAEA literally had cameras throughout the nuclear facilities. The criticism was the lack of sanctions was allowing the Iranians to fund its proxies like Hezbollah. Exactly. That's it. That's why. The deal was not cut on the proxies being funded. The deal was cut on the basis of Iran denuclearizing, which was good. That was a good thing. And because it was a good thing only because it allowed the normalization of relations with Iran, diminishing sanctions, things of that nature. It was a good deal. Anyway. What's your proof that Saudi did fund Al-Qaeda? What's my proof that Saudi Arabia funded Al-Qaeda? What? Hello? Are you asking like 9/11 style, or are you asking currently American arms reaching Saudi Arabia, Al-Qaeda? I mean, just look up the Saudi royal family. I don't know if you know about a little-known man who probably should have joined the NBA instead of, trying to dunk on the Twin Towers. Okay? His name was Osama bin Laden. I don't know if you know about him. Maybe you saw him. He's popping off on TikTok recently. He was 6'7". He was tall as hell. Yeah. All right, let's continue.
The U.S.'s broader counter-terror strategy for the Middle East.
The goal of U.S. policy in Yemen is to make sure that Yemen cannot be a safe haven that extremists can use to attack the West and to attack the United States.
Yemen is home to the most active and dangerous branch of al-Qaeda. The U.S. has a major interest in preventing this terror.
Yeah, who were they being funded by?
From taking advantage of the power vacuum in Yemen to plot new attacks. Finally, the U.S. is honoring one of its longest-standing and most important allies. Since World War II, Saudi Arabia has been a vital partner against communism and now terrorism. The Yemen campaign is a high priority for Saudi Arabia, and that makes it a priority for the United States. But as the war devolves into a bloody stalemate, the administration is increasingly...
He was 6'4", 6'5", bro. He was literally your height. I thought he was like 6'7". People used to say he's 6'7".
worried about being complicit in potential war crimes. In State Department documents obtained by Reuters, a meeting agenda from January of 2016 talks about limiting exposure to LOAC, which means the law of armed conflict. Some in the White House worry that the U.S. was potentially violating that law because of its assistance to Saudi Arabia. In those documents, State Department officials also discuss the implications of a 2013 International Court decision implying that if the U.S. were to provide practical assistance, encouragement, or moral support to the Saudis, the U.S. could be charged with war crimes itself. In an effort to avoid this, the U.S. issued a no-strike list to the Saudis to try to mitigate civilian casualties.
It's so funny that, like, our other regional ally, rather regional proxy, identical situation. It's like our unconditional support for Israel, just like our unconditional support to Saudi Arabia, on identical terms, is putting us liable legally for crimes of genocide. But of course, it doesn't matter what happened with the Saudi situation. Nothing. What will happen with the Israel situation? Most likely the same. Okay?
It included things like known hospitals, universities, schools, cemeteries. The Saudis appear to be ignoring it.
They appear to be ignoring it. The laser guidance that we gave the Saudis guided those missiles that we gave to the Saudis. Like, in the rubble, I remember covering the school bus that blew up. Okay? And it was like, there was literally a piece of the munitions used inside of in the rubble. The school bus that was blown up. And I think it was Raytheon, wasn't it? One of the military-industrial complex beneficiaries.
The UN estimates 10,000 people have died in the fighting, that 370,000 children are malnourished, and that 10,000 other children have already died.
Shredded backpacks with like melted child skin on it, next to the remaining the remains of a Raytheon missile. Just great advertisement. So here is what by 2020 by 2020 in 4 years after this, that number had skyrocketed. What is the overall like total? Here, let's look at the Wikipedia. No. It was Raytheon. My man said, when is the next 9/11 gonna drop? Oh, it wasn't Raytheon, it was Lockheed Martin. Damn, sorry. bomb that killed 40 children in Yemen was supplied by the U.S. Oh, it was an MK-82. Nice. I mean, they all create some of the best child killers. Like they're just so good. America's best export. Like we make the best child killer bombs. It's so good. Shit. The other. All right, never mind. Let's continue.
From preventable disease. Nearly 3 million people have been pushed out of their homes in the last year of fighting alone. Truces have come and gone, while hopes for peace talks falter. The Houthis continue to run the government in the capital of Sana'a, raising questions about what Saudi Arabia has actually accomplished, and whether any of it could possibly be worth the cost.
By the way, this is why the same dynamic for liberals, when they heard about the genocide in Yemen, heard that like Saudi Arabia was doing it. So they were like, oh, okay, that's a permissible thing to criticize, right? Now, though, when America is bombing Yemen directly, okay, at the behest of America's ally Israel, now they're going to be like, dude, so worth it. Actually, the Houthis are the real bad guys in every situation, probably the worst guys. Remember, the very same people, I told you this yesterday, when America first blew up positions in Yemen, I told you that they were you could key search, if they haven't already deleted their older tweets, you could probably key search like people condemning Saudi Arabia for the genocide in Yemen back in like 2016, 2017, 2018. And then those very same liberals now being like, actually, the genocide wasn't really a genocide. It was a double genocide. It was the Houthis that were doing the genocide.
Here at home, in Congress, some lawmakers from both parties have talked about stopping weapons sales to Saudi Arabia until it does more to keep the air-worn Yemen from causing massive human rights abuses. Others argue that America's relationship with Saudi Arabia is so important that the U.S. needs to keep selling weapons despite the carnage in Yemen. The Obama administration,
especially after Khashoggi, when Saudi Arabia chopped up Jamal Khashoggi, whatever, right? And Donald Trump was asked, like, what's up? You're going to keep giving them $10 billion in weapons, worth of weapons? And Trump straight up said, what are you going to do? Like, who's going to buy the weapons? Somebody has to buy the weapons. If they don't buy it from us, they're going to buy it from Russia. And every liberal united in collectively saying, how dare you, sir? How dare you? How dare you say such things? Those very same liberals are now totally on board with bombing Yemen.
For its part, has repeatedly urged.
You were so goddamn right about the 40-year-old IT guys with DemSoc, BLM in their profiles, but totally caved for the U.S. bombing the shit out of Yemen. I encountered one this morning on Blue Sky. Oh, I'm telling you, it's the most predictable group of morons, okay?
The Saudis to do more to avoid accidentally hitting targets like schools and like hospitals. The White House has also condemned individual attacks. But the reality is that the U.S. finds itself increasingly complicit with the actions of a coalition led by Saudi Arabia. That means President Obama will leave office with America helping an ally fight a bloody war, causing mass civilian suffering that shows no signs of ending. And that is not a legacy to be proud of.
Yeah. Watch Vox make a new video about like how it's totally sick to blow up Yemen now. Why is killing Islamic jihadists bad? Great question, Saint Matriarch. First and foremost, I don't think we should be killing Islamic jihadists, okay? Especially because what you consider to be an Islamic jihadist is obviously most likely guided by white supremacist opinions. Secondly, this conflict, the closest thing that you associate to Islamic jihadists would be what? Salafists, right? I assume like the Al-Qaedas of the world or maybe the ISIS, right? The irony here is that it was the Al-Qaedas of the world that were that the Houthis were fighting against. So America is now aligning with was aligning with the jihadists in that circumstance, or whatever you consider to be a jihadist. I personally don't think that we should be doing genocide, ethnic cleansing, bombing campaigns using cluster bombs against any kind of religious group of individuals because we've decided that they're fundamentalists. And that extends even to Nazis in America. Okay? That's just me. I think that there are better solutions, like, fixing the underlying material inequalities and dealing with people like they are real human beings. Okay? That's what I think. This was one of the saddest and funniest clips of the entire relationship between Trump and MBS. He literally had a catalog of weapons. Dude, also MBS loves him, though.
Over a fairly short period of time. I was in Saudi Arabia in May.
He loves MBS.
And we are bringing back hundreds of billions of dollars into the United States, and we understand that. And
how then do you determine who is fundamentalist, jihadist? Genuine question. You don't. That's the whole point. And that's precisely the reason why it's a stupid idea, especially when you are super far removed from what's going on there. That's my point. You don't. There is no Islamist jihadist that you're blowing up in that situation. You're just blowing up Arabs. You're blowing up Muslims. You're blowing up brown people. And then you leave the rest in rubble. And then those that survive the bombing campaign become the next line of what you consider to be a jihadist or whatever the fuck.
they understand that some of the things that have been approved and are currently under construction and will be delivered to Saudi Arabia very soon, and that's for their protection. But if you look in terms of dollars, $3 billion, $533 million, $525 million, that's peanuts for you.